In the next 15 minutes, I want to talk a little bit about the academic development of our bilingual program, ESL program, and our school in general. Now, in my presentation, I want to address three very simple questions. Number one is, I want to tell you what does the teaching process involve. So what do we do with our students and why do we do that? My second topic would be, how do we evaluate the performance of the teachers and students? And lastly, we'll talk about how do we fix a problem if the performance of a student or a teacher is not, well, as good as we would like it to be. Okay, so let's move on to the first thing in my presentation. What does the teaching process involve? Now, to start with, I want to say that we are a bilingual school, bilingual program. Now, bilingual means that we incorporate all subjects, art, also PE, music, Chinese curriculum, but don't forget about that, about Chinese math, Chinese science. We've incorporated all in English language. So we want our both subjects to be taught in English and in Chinese. So far we are concentrated mostly on the English language, and I want to talk a little bit about what does English language look like. So we distinguish between class time and what do we do in the classroom. Usually the teaching process looks like presentation. Now, while presenting, we try to use a lot of visual aids, a lot of things to show to the kids to grasp their attention. Second thing, we try to use a lot of gestures, attract students' attention, especially primary school students. On top of that, we encourage students to talk to each other during group discussions, when we put students in small groups and let them talk to each other using their language while communicating with their friends. We also do individual work. We don't forget about that, about students' autonomy, about their ability to work on their own. And finally, we do wrap up our classes with group work, or sometimes project works, where we actually do something that is related to the subject. For example, if we're talking with grade 1 about the neighborhoods, about the type of buildings, we would probably wrap it up with a small project where we would do kind of small buildings, write down school, library, bus station, so that students get a feeling of what neighborhood looks like. So, and that's classroom. So that's what we do in the classroom. This is where we encourage students to use language in the classroom. Now let's talk a little bit about extracurriculum. What do we do outside the classroom? Now outside the classroom, we try to, again, engage students in conversation, engage students in playing with us, even outside when they're not in the classroom. During field trips, we try to sing English songs to them, try to introduce English, American, Russian, German culture to them. Outside the classroom, I teach them some songs in a beautiful environment where students sit on the grass, foreign teachers playing some music to them, learn songs, everybody's having fun. We teach them culture through holidays, because this is a big part of our culture, Western culture. Holidays, things like Halloween, Christmas. Yeah, for some people, for some students, Halloween just means costume, but there is a history behind each holiday, and that's our aim as teachers of Western culture, to show them what these holidays are all about. So these are two main components of our teaching of bilingual program. Class time, teach them in the class, and teach them outside the class. In the next semester, we're going to emphasize it even more. We'll spend more time outside the classroom talking to students and encourage them to use their language, not only while they're sitting at the desk, but also outside. While we teach our students, we have a certain objective, what we want to teach them. And these are 4 basic components that our students shall grasp. First, listening. They should be able to understand what teachers are talking about. Second, they need to be able to respond to what teacher is talking. If I say, what's her name? They need to comprehend and be able to speak. Right? Next component is reading. Don't forget about that. Speaking is important, listening is important, but reading is also one of the 4 major components that they need to grasp. Be able to read. Handwriting, screen, Even keyboard. Right now, most of the time we read off the keyboard. They need to be able to read the keyboard as well, the digital information as well. And finally, writing. They should be able to spell the words, write the words, well, to be able to read them after that. So these are 4 major components that we try to incorporate into our learning process, teaching process. And once students get agreed on these 4 components, that leads to fluency. Fluency means they can use the language. They can fully use all 4 components: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So that's, in a nutshell, what our bilingual program is about. Bilingual program is about not only teaching them our classroom, not only classroom, but it's a program which includes art, PE, music, physical education, and we also don't forget about Chinese curriculum, Chinese science, Chinese language, Chinese math. So put together, we create an atmosphere for the students to grow both as a learner and a person. We teach them language and to grow as a person. So this is what the teaching process looks like in a nutshell. Now let's move on to the next topic, which is called how do we evaluate the performance of students and teachers. Now when we know what our target is fluency. We teach them listening, speaking, reading, and writing. We can, try to evaluate them. And at work, we have 2 tools to evaluate teachers and students. These are 2 separate tools we use to evaluate teachers' performance and students' performance. Now, first, let's have a look at the teachers' evaluation. Now, what do we expect of teachers? We expect them to be excellent, right? We all like excellent teachers, but what is excellent? Everybody has different idea of excellence. Some people think excellence is just talking. Some people think excellence is showing something. Other people think that excellence is when you encourage students. And we try to reflect what do we mean by excellent by description. We have 4 levels. Does not meet the standard, 1 star. Improvement necessary, 2 stars. Effective teacher, 3 stars. And highly effective, 4 stars. Now each level has a clear description of what it means. Let's say we have first criteria, lesson objective. Basically, what teacher is going to teach during the class. And we have a clear explanation. Let me just scroll down a little bit. Okay, so this is what it is. So if teacher designs each class with clear, measurable goals, closely aligned with standards and unit outcomes. If teacher is doing that, well, we say, well, lesson objective, well, highly effective. Let's talk a little bit about another criteria, active grammar and active vocabulary. Now let's see, this is the description of the highly effective teacher. Always presents materials clearly and explicitly, with well-chosen examples and even an appropriate language. Well, this is highly effective. Let's scroll down to not highly effective, but this is the bottom level. Does not meet the standard. Often presents materials in a confusing way, using language that is inappropriate. Teacher is only using language, no visual aids. Inappropriate language, confusing words, does not meet the standard. What does it mean? It means that we give teacher a week or maybe 2 weeks to improve. The teacher is not improved, sorry, does not meet the standard. So this is in a nutshell, very briefly, how do we evaluate teachers? On top of lesson objective, active grammar, and active vocabulary, we do have a learning environment. Learning environment basically means how do we make use of the classroom? Do we use PPT? Do we use furniture as a classroom arrangements? Do we use music? Do we use all these things? If teacher is making use of all these things, this is a highly effective speaker. Highly effective teacher. So this is how we evaluate teachers. Now let's move on and see how do we evaluate students. This is the most important part. Now, we prefer to evaluate students on a continuous basis, not just look at the score of the examination and say, you're a good student, you're a bad student. No, 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 this is not the way we are looking for. We're looking at a continuous assessment which starts with an entry test. What is an entry test? Well, entry test basically means we try to determine students' starting point. Because all of the students start at different levels. When they come to the first grade, they're all different. We have first graders, but Alfred has had previous English language learning before. So even when he comes to the classroom on 1st of September, he's already ahead of, for example, Betty and Clifford. So that's the purpose of the entry exam. And entry exam clearly shows who is ahead of the game, who is lagging behind. But we do not take it into account. So the weight of these grades is 0. Right? So these grades will not influence their final grade. This is just for us to see. This is the entry test. Now we follow up the entry test with a continuous assessment. Continuous assessment basically means we gauge their understanding by unit tests, homework assignment, classroom participation, and what we end up having are a grade for the students for almost every week. Sometimes we do have even 2 grades each week. And so that's what continuous assessment looks like. We start with the entry test, we follow up with continuous assessments, and then we move on to the midterm examination. Now, midterm examination is an important milestone in students' progression because we try to split up the midterm examination into 2 parts. Now, remember, we touched upon 4 aspects: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And in midterm examination, we split up an oral examination and written examination. And I want to talk a little bit more about oral examination because it's a really nice experience for both teachers and students. So what is actually happening during the midterm exam, each individual student, just think about that. Each individual student has a chance to talk to a foreign teacher one-on-one for about 2 minutes. And then this student comes to another foreign teacher. So 2 teachers are in the classroom and they're examining, 2 kids, then they swap. So it means that each student can talk to a foreign teacher one-on-one, using his language, listening, speaking, expressing his ideas, thoughts. It's amazing. It's really amazing that we can actually, at some point, we can talk to the students one-on-one. And when they got the grades, when they got, for example, 76, what is 76? Is it good? Bad? What is it? Now we have a clear explanation of what 76 stands for. It is excellent. 76 is somewhere between good and excellent, and we can see the explanation of what score stands for. It stands for the student is able to comprehend and respond to most of the questions. Not all of the questions, but most of the questions. So by doing that, by doing the oral examination, we provide the very exact idea of what the student is capable of. Now the written examination looks, very similar to every single task. So it has grammar, vocabulary, all these things. So this is what midterm examination looks like, and we add this midterm examination to our continuous assessment. Now after that, after the midterm, we do have continuous assessment one more time until we reach the final examination. Now during the final examination, we have the whole performance of the students, and this is the time when we look at the performance and we can say, so we look at the entry test all the way to the final test, and this is the time when we can think about who is performing well and who is performing not well. Well, let's have a look. We see that Clifford started at 34 points, very poor performance, and he ended up in 76. This is a really big gap from starting from 34, ended up 64, 67, almost twice. Let's look at, for example, Betty. Betty started as 98, she finished at 98. Well, she's, solid. And Alfred started at 76, but ended up in 68. Ooh, even though he started at the higher than Clifford, his actually learning curve is going down. And we need to do something about that, right? We cannot leave it like that, and that brings me to the next point. How do we fix a problem if students' performance is decaying? So now when we have these 2 tools, we can evaluate our teachers and evaluate students, we can actually determine why students' performance is not as we want it to be. We have 2 dimensions. We have students' dimensions and we have teachers' dimensions here. Right? And we can actually place each individual student into 4 different areas: happy area, most likely area, urgent area, and least likely. Now I'll spend 2 times talking about each of the areas. Now let's talk about happy area. Happy area means that both teacher and student are doing great. Teacher and students are doing great. This is our happy area. This is where we want to be. We want our teachers to be excellent. We want our students to be excellent. This is where it is. Now, most likely area, this is what we are most likely to be. The teacher is doing well, but students are not doing well. For some reason, students are not doing well, not attentive in the class. So let me just move on here. So what do we do in this case? How do we fix the problem? If teachers are doing well, but students are not doing well. So we can help students to review the learned material at home. How do we do that? We provide you with our lesson plans that you can pass on to parents, and they can revise the active vocabulary, active grammar. You know, they have all the words they can write with the kids. Well, we provide some of the words here, some of the structures they can revise with the students at home. And another alternative would be enroll student on the short-term weekend study program that we are going to launch next semester. So these are 2 alternatives we can do to kind of fix the problem if students' performance is not that good. Now, urgent is when students are not doing well and teachers are not doing well. What do we do here? Now, here we just make the same decisions for the students. We send some materials to home to review. We enroll them on the students' study program, weekend study program, but also we assign teachers to our very extensive training program for them to cut out as well. Because not only the students are doing badly, but teachers as well. So that's what we are. This is how we try to fix the problem. Right, so we evaluate where teachers are, where students are, and we try to fix the problem. That's what we do. Okay, now let me briefly recap what I was talking about. I started off with showing you what does the teaching process looks like, and I said that we try to incorporate all 4 aspects, and we try to give students as much English as possible, not only in the classroom, but also outside the classroom. Give them some ideas about holidays, about culture, all these things, not only in the classroom, but in school, in the whole school, outside the classroom, inside the classroom. Now, I followed up with the explanation how do we evaluate students and teachers with clear tools for teachers' evaluation and students' evaluation plan, and I ended up saying how do we fix a problem using 2 dimensions, teacher's dimension and student's dimension. We pinpoint the problem and try to fix it. Now, I'd like to close up now with a saying that one of the great teachers of the 18th century says, "The mediocre teacher tells, the good teacher explains, the superior teacher demonstrates, and the great teacher inspires." So I want everybody in this school not only to explain, not only to demonstrate, but I want everybody to inspire students to the greater future, because this is what we're doing here. Thank you very much.
Hi, Eve. Thanks. Today is very impressive and very precise demonstration. I got a question. Could you tell me what the differences between the bilingual program from our ESL program, from your point of view?
That's a very good question. Yeah, in our school, as you might know, we have bilingual program and ESL program. Now, some people think there are very thin distinction between these 2 things, but as I told you before, ESL is skill. English as a second language. That's what ESL stands for. English is a second language. This is skill. You learn a skill to speak. It's like skill to use, for example, a drilling machine. This is a skill. We learn, teach students a skill. In bilingual program, we teach them not only use language as a language, but we also teach them culture, philosophy, our English traditions, English sports during the PE classes. We spend more time with them to make them think, not use it as if they have a Chinese language and English language, but we teach them to use English to think about culture, about style of living, about all these different things. And that's what we're doing by, let me just briefly jump everything else. Okay, just jump here. So that's That's the main distinction between bilingual and ESL. We try to incorporate English language into every single subject. We have English math, we have Chinese math. We have English science, we have Chinese science. We have Chinese PE, we have English PE. So students go to different classes and they use language like in everyday life. Not only in the classroom, but outside the classroom as well.
Yeah, good, thank you. I got one more question. Since, as you know, we got 2 homeroom teachers for our bilingual program students. And can you tell me what does those foreign teachers engage in the program? Could you give me an example or something?
Yeah, absolutely. So we devised our program, a bilingual program, with the idea to have 2 homeroom teachers, a Mandarin teacher and a foreign teacher. Now, we want students to be with foreign teacher as much as possible. And so next semester, we want more engagement from the foreign teachers. First thing, we would like foreign teachers to come to the tea time and have tea and small snacks with students. Well, students should see that, well, foreign teachers can use chopsticks. Even though they're foreign teachers, they know how to use kuaizhi. Right? We come from the West, but we know how to use them. We like Chinese food. We want students to see that we enjoy eating what they are eating. We want them to be close to us. On top of that, we want to talk to students more. So in next semester during the breaks time, we're going to spend time just walking with them, being on the playground with them. Because when they leave the classroom, this is the real life of the student. They're not in the classroom, they're outside the classroom. So this is the time for them to be like in real life, in the streets. And this is the time when we want to talk to them, ordinarily, without assessment. Just, simply asking them some questions, communicating with them. So this is the main role of the foreign teacher, creating this environment, while the Mandarin assistant teacher is looking forward to evaluate students' performance during certain subjects and maintain discipline.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Because of time, I can have more questions.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to talk more about the distinction between ESL program and bilingual program tomorrow.
Okay.
That's the scope of my presentation tomorrow. Today, I just try to concentrate on some basic things, some fundamentals about our program. And tomorrow, I will talk more about the new things we're going to implement next semester for the bilingual and ESL programs.
Okay, thank you.